Hi folks, your Mox Z Gaming channel. If you've been looking for Eversoul Tier List, then your search ends here. This tier list guide is pretty useful, especially for those that are new to gacha games. With that in mind, in today's video I have prepared the Eversoul Tier List and Reroll guide. So be sure to watch it all. Alright, let's get ready bench and start today's video. First, let's talk about best tier list ranking criterion, S tier. These are the best characters currently available in the game, and you should definitely aim to add them to your party. They should also be the first choice to level up and gain access to equipment. A tier. These characters are perfect for filling gaps in a party, particularly when you haven't enough S tier's characters. You should investigate these characters and see which one will counter your party's weakness. B tier. Characters in this tier can really help during the early phases of the game, when you haven't unlocked many characters, but they fade later on. Definitely use them when you lack S in the characters, but swap them out as much as possible. C tier. Characters can occasionally have niche uses. They may be great at a particular game mode, or be exceptionally powerful early on. A late game party shouldn't have any though. So in particular, the tier list doesn't include all the characters. In my opinion, I only list characters that are worth taking time to gain and training. Well, let's talk about S tier first. Violet. I struggle with whether put her in S or a tier. I'll talk about it for details, and I'll put her in S tier now. She is an undead caster that specializes in debuffing and applying damage over time to enemies, while also dispelling buffs from them, so this character has ATK, can recover and debuff. She finds hope among the disasters, deals damage equal to 140% of ATK to the nearest enemy and 3 meters around it, and deals additional 140% damage as many times as the number of dot effects casted onto the target: burn, freeze, shock, poison, bleed, curse. Restores her HP equal to 300% of ATK and removes all debuff effects. Do you think it should be an S tier? However, the same problem as dark equivalents in Eversoul will for sure be really strong in the early game. Raising them will be hard for F2P players later. I don't recommend her for F2P players in the long term. Catherine, a human supporter that specializes in buffing. Usually the ability to shield the whole team alone makes a character really strong, but Catherine can on top heal you. To make things better, she is the only character in the game that can make your team invincible, basically making them immortal for the duration of the buff. This can be used to cheese a lot of content. Vivian, she is one of the few DPS among the suggested characters, but that's because of her haste buff she can give to whole team. Haste in RPG games is usually the most coveted buff as it increases speed, attack speed and casting speed. So even if her damage output will be average, the haste buff will massively elevate her. Talia, she is another healer, but she can also restore mana, MP, of all her allies. MP is needed to use the active skill of each character, so a mana battery like Talia will make a huge difference. Jacqueline, an undead striker that specializes in crown control, AoE debuffing enemies, and assassin skills, penetrates the atmosphere and strikes the battlefield. Moves towards the target with the lowest HP, then deals 220% to all enemies. The targeted enemy receives double the damage. Next, let's talk about A tier. Ayam. She is a caster who focuses on dot and debuffs to deal with enemies. The ATK value is indeed high, but it does not have the recover and heal function, which is worse than Violet. If Violet is in the formation, Ayam can be easily replaced. Ayam in the mirror attacks the enemy. Deals damage equal to 270% of ATK to the nearest enemy in a 2.5 m circular area and makes it bleed, dealing damage equal to 80% of ATK for 8 seconds. Clara, a human defender that specializes in crowd control, she is suitable for characters with high ATK formation, which can recover and heal, stops fighting for a moment and takes time to refresh. Recovers the HP of all allies by 60% of ATK and adds an effect which heals by 60% of ATK for 10 seconds. Nini, she is a caster who can inflict not 1, but 2 dots and also silence enemies. While dot plus debuff combination is common among the undead faction, what makes Nini stand out is the fact that she has increased MP regen, so she will use her active skill faster compared to other characters. Although it is a single attack, the advantage is that after each ATK and you can get in spuff. Petra, she is a defender who can steal enemies' HP to heal herself, trap one enemy in a CC and increase the damage he takes from all sources, and on top of that shield her whole team. She's like a love child between Chimera and Lucius from AFK Arena. And while her HP steal is capped at her ATK, which might be an issue because she's a defender, life-stealing characters are always great in gacha games, especially in the early game. Adrienne. She is a paladin-like character that is classified as a defender who can heal allies and stun enemies and pull them to herself, although his light equivalents in Eversoul will for sure be really strong in the early game, raising them will be hard for a F2P player. Miriam. She is a passionate food expert, deals damage equal to 320% of ATK to the nearest enemy in a straight 3M wide area and obtains 2 magic bullet special buffs, up to 7 stacks. There's nothing to talk about. Isn't that cool? Micah, a beast striker that specializes in crowd control, buffing allies, and debuffing enemies. She is definitely a superstar singer if no fighting, deals damage equal to 260% ATK to all enemies. When Siha is on the battlefield, inflicts additional damage equal to 130% ATK and stuns the enemy for 3 seconds. And then, B tier, Suni. She is a defender that can remove buffs from enemies, shield herself which will help survive, and her passive will make your healers better. Summons a ship to deal damage equal to 400% of def to the nearest enemy and enemies within 3.5 m of the target and removes all of the enemy's buffs. Nicole. She is known as ATK Bombera, fairy ranger that specializes in debuffing enemies. Nicole and Madori attack with a perfect combination. Deals damage equal to 220% of ATK around the nearest enemy in a 10 m wide and 8 m long area. Deals additional damage equal to 100% ATK if the target is under the Feather Brand effect. Jade, a human caster that specializes in crowd control and buffing allies. Although she increases the activation rate of additional effects on allies' skills, and if you have a 40% chance for something to happen on a skill, it seems she only affects the RNG ones. So if you have RNG ones in early game, Jade is not very useful for players. For later, we still need to test it though to make sure it works like that. Chloe, a fairy defender that specializes in crowd control and taunting enemies, a blow that strikes enemies like a meteor, dealing damage equal to 300% of def to the nearest enemy and enemies within a 2.5 meter radius, knocking them down and stunning them for 2.5 seconds. Claire, a human defender that specializes in crowd control, similar to Chloe. Choose 1 out of 2 for cultivation. Judge the enemy with the power of light. Deals damage equal to 250% of ATK plus 250% of def to the nearest enemy in 2.5 m around it, and stuns the target for 2 seconds. Mephistopheles, a human caster that specializes in crowd control and debuffing enemies. The advantage is that the attack range is relatively large. Use the Arc's support bombardment. Deals damage equal to 260% ATK in a 4 m area around the enemy with the highest ATK and additional damage equal to 150% ATK to targets in an analysis state. Prim, a giant rabbit doll steps on the enemy, inflicting damage equal to 320% of ATK in a 3 m circular area to the nearest enemy and those around it, stunning it for 3 seconds. Finally, let's talk about C tier, Era. It's available for PvP and PvE. She should be able to keep herself alive in the front line pretty well, because she can heal herself, and when she's healthy, she will actually deal more damage. Her passive will debuff the nearest enemy, which will come in handy in both progressing through the campaign, but also on bosses. Cherry, a human ranger that specializes in debuffing enemies and applying damage over time, blows up a liquor bottle containing refined alcohol to inflict damage equal to 230% of ATK to the enemies in a 7 m long. Erusha, an undead caster that specializes in crowd control and applying debuffs and damage over time to enemies, fires a barrage with Vidra. Deals damage equal to 220% ATK to the nearest enemy in a 4 m wide and 6 m long area, and deals 70% shock damage for 12 seconds. Flynn, a beast ranger that specializes in crowd control, engulfed in madness, fires a rocket, dealing damage equal to 330% of ATK to the nearest enemy and enemies within 2.5 m around it, and stuns the target for 2 seconds. Haru, a beast striker that specializes in crowd control and applying damage over time, charges with a single dagger. Deals damage equal to 370% ATK to the nearest enemy. If there is no enemy within 3 m of the target, deals double the damage. Lindsay, a warrior, it mainly increases her ATK number, which works better when used with debuffs character, approaches the enemy with the highest ATK and inflicts damage equal to 320% of ATK with a series of sword and gun attacks. If the day's special buff is at 10 stacks or higher, Siha, a beast supporter that specializes in crowd control and buffing and healing allies, Siha and Micah are good friends. Siha can recovers the HP of all allies by 180% of ATK, but if you don't have a high ATK character, the effect is actually very small. When Micah is on the battlefield, continuously recovers HP by 40% of ATK for 6 seconds. And then, let's talk about reroll guide. You could reroll again if you have get the character you wanna. Follow my perform, launch Eversoul on your device and log in as a guest. After that, complete the tutorial part and finish Prelude Chapter 5 and you'll be taken to the page where you can roll and summon some free characters. At this stage, you can reroll as many times as you want until you are satisfied with the pull. If you manage to get the character you want, you can bind an account. If you are unsatisfied with the pull, simply go to Settings Account Withdraw. This will reset your account, taking you back to the loading screen. In particular, reroll time. First time is only 20 minutes. From the main menu screen, click on the Mail button and collected rewards, which include 3000x Everstone and 10 summon ticket, etc. for summon. There are normal, type, friendship. It's no gacha probability. However, you can get an epic soul at least for 30 gacha guarantee mechanism. It goes without saying that the above list reflects the Mox Gaming channel's opinions. While I recommend picking the S-tier characters, you are urged to use the ones you are comfortable with. This allows you to explore new options and master every character in Eversoul, and wish you all luck for taking the victory through your battles. And I'll leave the timestamps down in the description. Don't forget to follow, like and share. Thank you so much for watching this video.